Hello everyone, I'm Bill Hammond and I actually paid to see this, and welcome back one last time to the 2026 Oscar Blitz, where I break down every nominee in every category at the 98th Academy Awards. Well, just one bit left to cover, and that's the be-all end-all of the whole process. Best Picture. 10 nominees are in contention for the highest prize in the film industry, and I'll give each of them their due here in this space. Before we get started though, for those not aware, I do have a special system in place for picking the big one. In every other category, I simply go over the nominees, then rank them from worst to best, with the top spot going to what would get my vote, if I ever had one. But for Best Picture, it's a different story. Because the category is a ranked choice vote rather than just a straight up popular plurality, Academy voters are asked to rank all 10 nominees on their ballot. And since Best Picture goes to the film's producers, I believe I should be as objective as possible in determining the best overall production. As such, I use a weighted point system where I rank all 10 movies and assign 1 to 10 points based on position within each major aspect of filmmaking, with the top film getting 10 points, second place getting 9, and so on down to 1 point for last place. Since acting is the most forward-facing of all these elements, it gets counted 3 times. Directing and writing are next, so they get counted twice. I then add 1 set of points each for artistic and technical achievements. And finally, because personal enjoyment does have to factor in here, there's one last set of 10 points at stake for how much I enjoyed the finished product once I saw it as a whole. This makes for a total of 100 possible points to determine the final order, with my personal preference also serving as a tiebreaker if needed. I know that's a lot of info, but hopefully it'll all make sense as we go along. Rather than ranking the nominees at the end, we'll just go straight into the list in order of their final scores. Let's get to it! In 10th place is F1. Chad Oman, Brad Pitt, Dee Gardner, Jeremy Kleiner, Joseph Kosinski, and Jerry Bruckheimer. Given how many producers had their hands in this, you'd think this would lead to a stellar production, but no. Woefully no. This feature-length ad for Formula One is less a movie and more of a dick-measuring contest committed to celluloid. It ranks dead last in every category except the technicals, where it just barely cracks the top 5 due to some pretty decent cinematography, editing, and special effects. At least during the racing sequences. Everything else is just one tired sports movie cliche after another, broken up by a disgusting litany of product placement. The sterile sets and awful soundtrack of dad rock and lazy hip-hop all but negate the idea of artistic elements, and the acting's so terrible that I'm honestly shocked Brad Pitt would even put his name on it as a producer, much less star in it. This is corporate filmmaking at its worst, earning a barely above minimum 15 points out of 100. May we never speak of it again. 9th place goes to Marty Supreme, Eli Bush, Ronald Bronstein, Josh Safdie, Anthony Kategas, and Timothée Chalamet. On the whole, this is a good movie, but it's not a great one. Really, it's a glorified Best Actor showcase for Chalamet, and it only occasionally rises above that basic premise. Ranking 9th in nearly every aspect, it only rises to 8th in artistic achievement and my personal enjoyment because the film is entertaining, but inessential. It's just your standard gritty take on an anti-hero who gambles on himself and constantly loses, but remains delusional in his confidence that it'll eventually all work out. Basically, it's uncut gems for ping pong. Chalamet himself does a great job in the lead, but the rest of the ensemble is lackluster, filled with non-actor stunt casts, the worst of which being Kevin O'Leary. The creative use of a 1980s soundtrack for a film set in the 40s was a clever choice, and the table tennis sequences are appropriately exciting when you can actually see them, because the lighting is far too dark and moody to actually be able to pay attention. This will almost certainly get Chalamet his Oscar, but beyond that, this is not a serious contender. Final score, 22 out of 100. In 8th place is Begonia, Ed Gein, Andrew Lowe, Yorgos Lanthimos, Emma Stone, and Lars Knudsen. In what may be a disturbing trend going forward, this is the 3rd film in a row on this list to have the lead actor and the director listed as producers, as if they know there's not enough actual talent to get these movies greenlit and funded, so they turn into backdoor vanity projects. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, and this is a good flick, but it's far from his best. Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons give solid performances, enough to rank 7th in acting, and it gets to 6 on the strength of Lanthimos' directing and the artistic designs, but that's about it as far as highlights. It ranks dead last in technicals, and gets 7th in writing thanks to its wholly ill-advised concept of making a conspiracy theorist into a protagonist, exacerbated by an utterly insulting finale. All in all, Begonia earns 38 points, as well as my sincere desire that Lanthimos' next project is a return to form. 7th goes to Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro, J. Miles Dale, and Scott Stuber. Guillermo del Toro's version of Frankenstein is a lot of fun and very appealing visually, with awesome sets, memorable designs, and a stellar makeup job on Jacob Elordi, which is why it ranks 3rd when it comes to the artistic side. It also cracks the top 3 on technicals with some fantastic camera and sound work. However, relative to the rest of the competition, it's a huge drop-off after that, with a rating of 8th in acting and writing and 7th in directing. That's not to say that any of this is bad, though it is goofy in parts. It's just that the rest of the films on this list are just demonstrably better. I did enjoy Elordi's sympathetic performance as the creature, and occasionally got a kick out of Oscar Isaac chewing all the scenery. Honestly, this is everything I expected out of a Frankenstein movie from Guillermo del Toro, right down to the uncomfortable Shape of Water subtext about how Elizabeth wants to bone the monster. But with the film industry at a crossroads, we just need something more. As such, I can only give this one 43 points. In 6th place is Hamnet. Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. Hey, for once the director's not on the list! Hooray! Anyway, Hamnet is a creative and shameless tearjerker, imagining a scenario where the death of William Shakespeare's son led to the creation of one of his greatest plays, Hamlet. But the real meat of the film isn't in Will's journey, but that of his wife Anne Hathaway, here called Agnes. Jessie Buckley plays on our sympathies with expert skill, only to be outdone at times by child actor Jacoby Jupe in the title role. Due to the embarrassment of riches we have in front of and behind the camera, the film only ranks 6th in acting and 8th in directing, but it makes up a lot of ground with a solid script in 5th place and coming in 2nd and 4th in arts and technicals respectively. Add in a 6th place finish on my personal leaderboard, and you wind up with a wholly respectable 54 out of 100. I've been an advocate for going back to 5 nominees for Best Picture for a while, meaning that as I see it, this would be the last cut, but that doesn't denigrate what was an exemplary project, especially considering it could have just been a lazy clone of Shakespeare in Love. In 5th place is The Secret Agent, Emily Lesclos producer. Wow, a single producer. Who would have thought it possible? Okay, I'll get off that soapbox now. The Secret Agent, one of 2 foreign entries up for the top prize this year, is a film that Academy voters should absolutely love, given that the entire affair is a throwback to the New Hollywood style of the 1970s, including several overt references to Jaws. Wagner Moura gives a tremendous performance, leading a highly competent ensemble that includes the late-great Udo Kier in his final role, as well as a host of names that should become well-known to American audiences through seeing this film. It places 5th in acting, 4th in directing, and 6th in writing, before dropping to 7th and 8th on the artistic and technical side of things. Its final score of 57 is less a reflection of anything lacking in its presentation. It ranks 3rd on my personal list for the nominees and 7th for the year overall, but in just how much the 4 films above it have going for them. 4th place is Train Dreams. Marissa McMahon, Teddy Schwartzman, Will Janowitz, Ashley Schlafer, and Michael Heimler. Netflix has taken a few victory laps thanks to the successes of Frankenstein and K-pop Demon Hunters, but of all their acquisitions last year, Train Dreams is the one that most deserves the laurels. The cast is one of the strongest of the year, highlighted by Carrie Condon, Felicity Jones, and what should have been nominated turns from William H. Macy and Joel Edgerton. It ranks 4th overall in acting, 4th in writing due to its tone poem-esque narrative, 5th in directing thanks to Clint Bentley's intimate and empathetic touch, 4th in art for his bittersweet designs and the excellent title song from Nick Cave, and 6th in technicals thanks to the expert use of natural lighting and thematically strong decision to film in Academy ratio. Add in a top 5 finish on my personal pantheon, and you're looking at a solid final score of 65 points. When I saw this back at AFI Fest, the sentiment amongst the viewers afterward was almost universal. This is a movie that needed to be seen in theaters, not on Netflix. And the fact that it's more likely to be the beginning of even more content dilution due to media consolidation, the film becomes an unintentional projection of the melancholy of its humble lead character. We're on to the podium now with the bronze medal going to Norway's entry Sentimental Value, Maria Ekerhovd and Andrea Berenson Ottmar. Sometimes the simplest stories end up making for the most special of film experiences, and this is a prime example. At its core, this is just a tale of generational trauma and coming to terms with the imperfections of ourselves and our loved ones. But director Joachim Trier makes so much more out of this simple premise, wringing every ounce of pathos and raw emotional honesty out of his cast. Renate Reinsve proves once again why she's one of the best actresses of her generation. Stellan Skarsgård lends an amazing amount of credibility to his flawed artist of a father. Inga Ivsdottir Lilius embodies the frustrations of everyone who's ever had to be a moderator in family drama, and Elle Fanning shows that she's grown by leaps and bounds from her less than stellar beginnings in the Maleficent films and the god-awful Nutcracker 3D. It ranks third across the board when it comes to acting, directing, and writing, and only drops off in the below-the-line areas, ranking 8th in art and 9th in technicals, mostly because the emotional core of the story is enough to not really need any extra accoutrements. It's a film that will cut you to the quick, but you'll be thankful for the catharsis. In the end, it's a very nice 69 out of 100. The silver goes to One Battle After Another, Adam Somner, Sarah Murphy, and Paul Thomas Anderson. We've known for a while that this is essentially a two-horse race. While several of the films up for Best Picture are of the highest quality, these last two are in a league of their own. Of the two, I prefer One Battle After Another slightly less, but it's still spectacular and would be a more than worthy winner. Led by Leonardo DiCaprio, Benicio del Toro, a rarely better Sean Penn, Teyana Taylor, and first-timer Chase Infinity, this is an absolutely stellar cast, ranking second by just a hair. This is a common theme here, as the film is runner-up for me in every aspect of this equation except for artistic achievement, where it drops to 5th, and technicals, where it takes the top spot. Paul Thomas Anderson has crafted an immensely fun and poignant tale of modern race relations, family struggles, aging, and the insurmountable odds that those with a rebellious heart have to face in order to effect actual systemic change. All the while, the affair is infused with crisp, funny dialogue, expert satire, immaculate cinematography, and some of the best action sequences of the entire year. Along with my top pick, One Battle After Another is a potential all-timer of a cinematic achievement, and I look forward to the years of debate about these top two films as they work their way into our collective culture. Final score, 88 out of 100. Finally, the number one spot goes to Sinners. Zinzi Kugler, Sev Ohanian, and Ryan Coogler. There is no such thing as a perfect film, but for the purposes of this experiment known as the Oscar Blitz, this is as close as you get. Yes, you could argue that the basic framing of the plot is eerily similar to From Dusk Till Dawn, and there are some bits that don't entirely work, like the fake CGI snake or the fact that the Choctaw pursuing Remick never show up again after he finds shelter and begins his diabolical vampiric plan. But to me, those are just nitpicks that don't denigrate this experience in the slightest. Top to bottom, this is the strongest cast of the bunch, from Michael B. Jordan playing two lead roles to Miles Caton absolutely blowing audiences away in his debut. The music is damn near perfect, from originals like I Lied to You to Ludwig Göransson's ambitious score blending classic blues with spiritual rhythms and Afro-futurist experimentation. The cinematography is stupendous, with nearly every scene of the juke joint bathed in red gradients to give the actual film a blood-soaked aesthetic, and the incredible one-shot of the juke dance serving as the best scene of all of 2025 cinema. The premise of setting a vampire story in the Jim Crow South as a metaphor for cultural appropriation and assimilation is a stroke of thematic genius, and Ryan Coogler makes sure you feel completely immersed in every single shot, practically turning his camera into its own character. Just like Everything Everywhere All at Once a couple years ago, Sinners is that rare entry that pushes the medium of cinema out of its comfort zone, challenging what the art form is capable of as a means of telling relevant and entertaining stories, evidenced by the fact that this is the only film of 2025 that cracked the top 10 at the box office without being part of an established IP. When we're so desperate for new ideas, that's an achievement that can't be ignored. Of the elements that I grade for these rankings, it comes top in all but technicals, where it finishes in a slight second place to One Battle After Another. That leaves it with a mind-boggling final score of 99 out of 100. If nothing else, Sinners should serve as notice that audiences still want creative original stories in movie theaters with the projects left in the capable hands of those who know what they're doing. Ryan Coogler already showed the world what he was capable of after taking it by storm with the Black Panther films, and now he's given us this masterpiece. At this point, he can do no wrong. And there it is! If I somehow had a vote at this year's Oscars, that's how I determine Best Picture this year. But of course, I'm just one voice in a sea of them, so please let me know what you think should win in the comments down below, and what criteria you'd use to determine your choices. I'd really be interested to know. Thank you all so much for taking the ride again with me this year. It's a labor of love to celebrate film like this, and I'm grateful to every single one of you who gives me even a moment of your time to listen to my insane ramblings. Until next year, everyone, I'm Bill Hammond. I actually paid to see this. Enjoy the Oscars, everybody.
This is the BTRP Media Network.